So we are discussing about relationship. In India, somebody was saying the great Nani Palkhiwala. Everybody, those who know about him, like a great lawyer, and from the part of the judiciary, he made a very interesting observation. He said, after eternality, what is next? Something very close to eternality. He said the legal case, the civil suits in India. Right. So much for every good thing has its disadvantage. Right. Bharat has the great advantage of joint family system, wherein the celebration becomes very colorful. Even the marriage card are full of family members. There is support system. There is a great celebration. But along with that comes a flip side of it. Unfortunately, because of whatever reason, we'll not get into all the reason, that the largest number of the civil suit, that means the very family members fighting with each other, the cultured family member fighting with each other in regards to money matter, in regards to land matter, in regards to inheritance, right? Then all the belief system, knowledge, understanding, everything are tossed off. It's an irony, right? So therefore, in the Mahabharata, Bhishma Pitamaha, yesterday was, Bhaishmi Ekadashi. Some people say that he passed away on the day of Ekadashi, right? So Bhishma, when he was lying on the bed of arrows, he gave instruction, he gave advice to Yudhisthira Maharaj in many aspects of life, right? So many aspects of life. And one interesting point he mentioned is that in this world, when there are siblings, your immediate family member, biologically they are your brother, sister, he says that. But if they are not culturally trained, they become your very enemy. And where do we see this? We see this in the story of Mahabharata. The Mahabharata is not simply a story. It is not an entertaining story, like you reproduce that story, Duryodhan, Bhima, and then Bahubali, and then so many such stories. These are not only for entertainment. That happens in everybody's house. That happens in everybody's community. So Bhishma says, biologically one is related, but without the sanskaras, they become almost like a wild animals in the forest, fighting with each other. But culturally, when they recognize through wisdom and proper sanskaras, then it becomes meaningful. The journey is completed. Therefore, relationship, it is explained, relationship, it is not based upon simply sentiments. It is based upon right strategy. If there is no strategy, then the sentiment have the power to make us get stuck and lose our right destination, right? Therefore, the Sanskrit word sambandha, there are two things. There is bandhan and there is samyakta. Samyakta means integration. If the sambandha is not properly understood and properly practiced, it gives rise to bondage. बंधन का कारण बन जाता है. But if it is understood properly and implemented properly, then that very bandhan becomes samyak. Samyak means integrated. Integration means we'll have the power and the resources and the wisdom to know how much to be involved and how much not to be involved. Many times in the field of relationships, especially family, there is a hierarchy, and therefore the so-called liberal people, so-called those who slander the family values, and they have so many stories to slander also, sometimes for the right reason also, right? So they say, just see what does it do. All so-called family simply causes more and more and more and more pain. Whenever there are fights, I've heard some people say, oh, and I'm happy that I'm only child of my parents. Unlike my father having brothers and sister, I see them fighting. Right? They don't realize the disadvantage of being only child. They only see the disadvantage of having a joint family. As I said, that in relationship there is duality. There is a good side and there is a bad side. Therefore, Vidur in the Mahabharata explains every relationship goes through 5 emotions, 5 interaction. First is you love and you also hate. Therefore, divorce only happens in the marriages. Court cases happens only with your brothers and sisters, with whom you have loved, played with, sat, shared food from the same plate, right? Just like other day we were discussing, like those who want to make money, they should have the courage to lose all the money also. Only they can make money. If you are playing cricket, there is one Australian cricketer, very upcoming person, but every time he comes to the ground to play, he gets beaten. I think recently again he got it. But if he wants to continue, he should understand this is part of growing. You cannot grow unless you have the courage to take the extreme side of it. A king wants to be the king, he should be willing to live as a beggar if he loses the battlefield, the war. Only when he has the courage and the power to be a beggar, then only he can rise back and stay in the kingdom. Therefore, it is significant whether the Pandavas or Lord Ramachandra, they both stayed in the forest, almost begging. So it is not simply a story, it is a symbolic reality which is applicable to everybody in everybody's life. Therefore, when we realize this understanding, when we realize this, what to speak of that? In the Ramayana, even for the right reason, there could be a conflict. The famous story. Now, who can be more serving Lord Ramachandra more than Mother Sita as a wife and Lakshman as a brother? There can nobody better than them. Like Lakshman and Mother Sita. Sita is goddess of fortune, and Mother Sita, she is the goddess of fortune, and Balramji, Lakshman, is an expansion of the very Lord. When Lord Ramachandra went chasing that deer, golden deer, he gave instruction to Lakshman to care for Mother Sita. I will take care of the deer. And Ravan knew how the world functions. He knew certain principles of life, and he used that principles of life for his advantage. What was that? He made Marich cry out when Marich called out, "Hey Sita, hey Lakshman, hey Sita, hey Lakshman." No, the voice was, he was able to imitate the voice of Mother Lord Ramachandra. So there are two different responses. Sita heard the voice and Lakshman also heard the voice. But both responded differently for the right reason. Sita, being a wife, she responded with concern. Oh my God, something must have happened to my husband. किसी ने तो कुछ किया होगा. And Lakshman responded with confidence. अरे राम को क्या हो सकता है? अभी तो उन्होंने 14,000 राक्षसों को एक मुहूर्त में खत्म कर दिया, तो उनको क्या हो सकता है? But the confidence and concern, they became conflicting with each other. विश्वास और जो उनके मन में जो ये आ गया, अरे कुछ तो हुआ है, right? So confidence and concern are complementary qualities generally, but here they became conflicting with each other. Not only they became conflicting qualities, but they became cause of questioning each other's character. Sita questioned the character of Lakshman. यानी कि 12-13 साल तक लक्ष्मण उनके साथ में था, कभी उसमें उन्होंने देखा नहीं था कि कुछ गलती है. देयर वाज अ स्टैटिस्टिक, प्रूवन स्टैटिस्टिक ऑफ लक्ष्मण's credibility, but Sita accused Lakshman, calling him that he was looking for this entire time to see that Ram is killed and he can enjoy her. सोचो, अगर ये सीता लक्ष्मण के बीच में हो सकता है, तो who we are, all our superficial friendliness, loving relationship, they can be just instantly, dried up within no time if there is no strategy, proper strategy. भावनात्मक संबंध वो भावनाओं के कारण ही नष्ट हो जाता है. प्रेम ही द्वेष का कारण बन जाता है. आत्मविश्वासी घातक का कारण बन जाता है. In the Christian community, it is explained the largest number of breach of trust happens amongst the community member only. The trust becomes the foundational principle to exploit that trust. Hundreds of stories are there like that, right? So Mother Sita spoke out this to Lord Lakshman. तुम यहां इसी कारण के लिए आए हो. So Lakshman couldn't hear that. It was very painful for him to hear. And he decided to do something which was extremely displeasing to Lord Ram and dangerous to Mother Sita. देखो, इसलिए केवल इंटेंशन से काम नहीं चलता. Your good intentions may be appreciated by the universe afterwards, but good intentions without wisdom can cause great havoc in the life of people. इसलिए भगवान गीता में he says the greatest cause of suffering is ignorance. But if you are situated in the boat of transcendental knowledge, api chetasi papebhya sarvebhya papakrittama sarva jnana plaveneva vrajanam santarishyasi. That one is situated in the boat of knowledge. In fact, more than karma, it is ignorance which is cause of our suffering. Right? So Sita spoke this. Lakshman closed his ears. He was not supposed to walk away from there. He knew what could happen. He had told Lord Ram, my dear Lord, this is not the deer. It is not a deer, it is a Rakshasa. ये राक्षस है, इसके पीछे मत भागिएगा. He had told this to Lord Ram. He should have been more alert from the human perspective. like lesson is for us, not for him. But because he heard something very powerful statement, very painful statement, he also decided, okay, let me go. But he did not go without making clear indication to Sita. और वो भी कम नहीं थे लक्ष्मण. लक्ष्मण ने कहा स्त्री की बुद्धि हमेशा भ्रष्ट ही होती है. That is also not the truth what Lakshman spoke, and what Sita spoke also is not the truth. But when emotions are very high, when people have an outburst, rather than seeing the emotions, we see the words and take them very seriously. उन्होंने कहा मैं यहां जा रहा हूं सारे दिशाओं को लेकर. He, what else can he do? He could only ask the direction to protect her. लक्ष्मण रेखा के कहानी में कोई समस्या नहीं है, बहुत अच्छी कहानी है. वाल्मीकि रामायण में ऐसी कोई कहानी नहीं है. Right? He went away, and along with that, walking away from Mother Sita, he basically allowed Sita to be kidnapped by Ravana seamlessly and easily. Why this happened? What do we learn from this? We learn how much power is there in not even the misunderstanding in emotions. इसलिए निर्णय हमेशा लोग भावनाओं के भर में लेते हैं, बुद्धि के अवस्था पर नहीं. People make decision unfortunately during emotions rather than wisdom. When Lakshman went there, what do you hear from Lord Ram? Lord Ram said, what the hell are you doing here? Sita questioned his credibility, and Lord Ramachandra questioned Lakshman's competency. उनके क्षमता के बारे में प्रश्न उठाया और सीता जी ने उनके चरित्र के ऊपर प्रश्न उठाया. तो बचा ही क्या है अगर ये दोनों भी नहीं है? इफ यू डोंट हैव अ कॉम्पिटेंस एंड कैरेक्टर, व्हाट एल्स इज देयर फॉर यू? Just see the power, even in the Mahabharata, the conflict between Yudhisthira and Arjuna, in regards to having the same goal. गोल एक ही था, कर्ण की हत्या करनी है, कर्ण का वध करना है, right? And both our Arjun and Yudhishthir had very clear goal. कर्ण का वध करना चाहिए और युधिष्ठिर की सुरक्षा होनी चाहिए और अर्जुन की सुरक्षा होनी चाहिए. Arjuna was worried about protection of Yudhishthir Maharaj, and Yudhishthir was worried about the vows they had heard. ऐसा तो मालूम था उनको. एक तो not exactly that he had given that vows to Kunti. ऐसा एक gut feeling होता है ना, कर्ण is targeting Arjun. एक तो अर्जुन जिएगा या कर्ण जिएगा. Right? So you can imagine how much concern they had. So when Arjuna came back looking for his brother's protection, so Yudhishthira Maharaj had a wrong expectation. He thought that Arjun must have killed Karna. Parantu Arjun had come to look for the welfare of Yudhishthira. When he realized that Yudhishthira is safe, but when Yudhishthira realized that Arjuna has not killed Karna, तो युधिष्ठिर ने इतने गुस्से से गाली दिया अर्जुन को, घृणास्पद शब्दों का उपयोग किया. He went up to such an extent, he said, my mother should have aborted you when you are 5 months old in her womb. ऐसा कोई बोल सकता है? And that too युधिष्ठिर महाराज बोल सकते हैं. शांति के मूर्तिमान स्वरूप है, उनके मुख से निकला. मतलब कहने की गर्भपात की कॉन्सेप्ट ऐसा नहीं कि आज से, पहले से. He is talking about great Arjun in front of Krishna. बोलते ना भगवान के सामने गाली नहीं देना चाहिए, यहाँ तो भगवान मूर्ति के रूप में होते हैं, ये तो भगवान सामने खड़े हैं, डायरेक्टली द लॉर्ड इज देयर, उनके सामने बोल रहे हैं. एंड देन ही सेड, अर्जुन स्टिल टॉलरेटेड. Then Yudhisthira said something very painful for Arjun. And he said, hell with your Gandiva bow. Useless. Right? That made Arjuna lose his temper. He removed his sword. He came to attack Yudhisthira Maharaj to kill. तो इसलिए कभी कभी लोग प्रश्न करते हैं, रे डिवोटी लोग झगड़ा क्यों करते हैं? अरे यहाँ भगवान के एक्सटेंशन झगड़ा कर रहे हैं. सीता और लक्ष्मण, भगवान के पार्षद युधिष्ठिर और अर्जुन. राइट? देन कृष्ण आस्क्ड अर्जुन, अर्जुन व्हाई यू केम हियर, क्यों आए थे तुम इधर? यू हैड कम हियर होपिंग टू सी युधिष्ठिर इज सेफ, और अभी उसके विपरीत व्यवहार कर रहे हो, आप युधिष्ठिर को मारना चाहते हो. एंड देन कृष्ण मेड वन स्टेटमेंट. He said, my dear Arjuna, you only heard the word, you did not feel him. आपने उनके शब्दों को सुना, लेकिन उसके पीछे क्यों है उसको नहीं समझ पाए. And there is a long story. Krishna strategically, very systematically, people fall in love, people become attached to each other only because of emotions, and people hate each other only because of emotions. Events are simply details. The words are simply details. Bhavanaye, bhavanaye, bhavanaye. Similarly, forget that in the Mahabharata, now this is the height. Who is Balramji? Tomorrow we are celebrating Nityananda's appearance day. Right, Trayodashi. Who is Balramji? Balramji is none other than extension of Krishna only. Complexion में अंतर है, थोड़ा मूड में अंतर है. But that very Balramji, in regards to Duryodhan, Lord Balramji had told, I will not take part in this battlefield from any perspective, neither as a spectator, neither as an advisor, nor as a warrior. तो इसलिए यात्रा चले गए. लेकिन गड़बड़ क्या हो गया? यात्रा पूरा हो गया, लेकिन युद्ध नहीं पूरा हुआ था. युद्ध की जो अंतिम घड़ी में आ गए हो, द लास्ट पार्ट में आ गए. I call Lord Balram ji the transcendental liberal. हमेशा गलत लोगों का ये बाजू लेते हैं. जैसे आज भारत में चल रहा है हिजाब को लेकर, people from everywhere saying, oh, that is their, such a hypocrites, right? That Yusuf Malala, right? She is one of the greatest witch ever produced in the Nobel Prize में. उसके शब्दों में उसने प्रेजेंट किया था कि बुर्का क्या होता है. And is rising now, coming there, being controlled by people. कुछ भी बोलना, right? So बलराम जी decided कि मैं किसी से भाग नहीं लूंगा, मैं किसी प्रकार से कुछ भी नहीं लूंगा. I am neutral. But when he comes there, consciously or unconsciously, he sides Duryodhan and he goes to attack Bhima. He goes to kill Bhim. तो भगवान रोकते हैं बलराम जी को. तो रोकना तो हो गया. तो रोकने के बाद में कृष्ण और बलराम जी के बीच में वाद विवाद हो जाता है. कृष्ण समझाने का प्रयास करते हैं. कृष्ण इज ट्राइंग टू कन्विंस बलराम जी, बट बलराम जी इज प्लेइंग दिस फैंटास्टिक रोल. He is not convinced. He walks away from there. Therefore, one Vaishnava commentator writes कि देखो मेरा कर्मा क्या है. Krishna is saying कृष्णा इज सेइंग देखो मेरा कर्मा क्या है, मेरा ही एक्सटेंशन मेरे प्रति गलत धारणा रखता है. द वेरी एक्सटेंशन ऑफ माय फॉर्म इज हैविंग अ मिसअंडरस्टैंडिंग. तो कलयुग में तो क्या क्या होगा मुझे लेकर, लेकिन मुझे तो मेरा कर्तव्य करना ही पड़ेगा. So these are the foundational principle of how relationship functions in the real world. But in all of these stories, whether it is Arjun and Yudhisthira, whether it is Mother Sita and Lakshman, or Krishna and Balaram, those events did not break relationships because they had the maturity, they had the strategy, they had the system to reconcile. अगर इसको हम समझ लेते हैं, the first thing will happen in India, large number of civil suit. Or these are all, most people who are fighting in the court cases are people with a lot of resources, wealthy people, and sometimes stories are extremely scary to hear, extremely unreasonable to hear, right? और ये जो सिस्टम है ना कोर्ट का, is one of the greatest, I would say a greatest family breaking system which has been introduced by the Britishers. पहले लोग गांव में बैठ के, हाँ वहां भी समस्या हो जाती थी, उसको सुलझा देते थे. It was a more efficient system in solving people's problem. The solving would happen. There could be mota moti here and there, little problematic. But now once you go to the courtroom, your father will hand over the paper to you as a legacy. वो श्राद्ध से ज्यादा ये बोलेगा तुम लड़ते रहना बेटा. और उसका बाप अपने बेटों को देगा, तुम भी लड़ते रहो. 1 generation, 2 generation, 3 generation. Correct. Recently one royal family का केस हुआ यूपी में. After 80 years, the court gave the decision. सबके सब भूत बने होंगे उधर ही. Rather than reconciling. Why? Because the conflict is real, but aggravating the conflict is unreal. अगर कॉन्फ्लिक्ट होना ये कोई बड़ी बात नहीं है, लेकिन कॉन्फ्लिक्ट को सुलझाना ये संस्कृति का लक्षण है, ये संबंधों का लक्षण है. Therefore, instead of saying that we don't want bigger families, the nuclear family is much more vulnerable in regards to relationship. They may not lose property, but they will lose themselves. अगर खोने के लिए कुछ तो होना पड़ेगा ना, खोने के लिए खुद ही नहीं हो तो आपके पास है या नहीं उससे क्या फर्क पड़ता है. इसलिए एट द एंड ऑफ द डे पांडवास, द गुड साइड फॉर द कौरवास, कौरवों के लिए क्या था सबसे अच्छा, पांडवों के साथ में लड़े, मर गए, मिट गए, लेकिन उनके श्राद्ध का पूरा उत्तरदायित्व पांडवों ने लिया. सिमिलरली इन द रामायण, विभीषण को लेकर कुंभकर्ण says, when they face with each other, कुंभकर्ण says to विभीषण, get away from here, निकल जाओ इधर से, क्योंकि अगर तू मर जाएगा तो हमारी श्राद्ध कौन करेगा. And don't make me mad because I'm a rakshasa, I might kill you. So better you stay away because our destiny is very clear. हम तो मरने वाले, तू जीवित रह जा. So just see, it is so interesting. In the Sanatan Sanskriti, the principle of relationship is very dynamic. Only when you are able to handle the disadvantaged side with maturity, with strategy, then there is a power to transcend those limitations and reconcile. इसलिए our Radhanath Maharaj would tell about 5 principles of relationship: appreciation, encouragement, respect, tolerance, and forgiveness. Appreciate the past good what you have experienced. Encourage the future potential. Respect the differences. Forgive, tolerate the unchangeable, and be sportive more than forgive, because who are we to forgive? आप जब भी बोलेंगे मैं तुमको क्षमा कर रहा हूं, इसका मतलब you are taking a higher position. So more than forgiveness, sportiveness, right? To move on with life. The 5th principle, that which is a कुछ गलतियां हुई है, लेकिन उस गलतियों को पानी डालने के बदले में लंबे समय तक उसको सुखा देना है. Sportive spirit. If you follow this 5 principle, there is a greater chances, to have a reconciled relationship. Even if there is no affection, at least there is a vyavhar. Recently, one businessman was telling me, he said, प्रभु जी देखो, प्रेम नहीं है, लेकिन व्यवहार में सच्चा होना चाहिए. He said affection is a fruit which happens afterwards, but there is a transactional transparency, so that might give rise to affection with each other. So following this principle, learning lessons from these stories, one can move forward in life. Thank you very much. Any questions or comment?
Thank you so much, Prabhu. Amazing, powerful class as always. And in fact, we are looking forward to many more such sessions, to have a whole series around some topics from Mahabharata Ramayana. But so for now, we'll take a few questions, Prabhu. I'll read from the chat and pass them on. If anyone has any more questions also, please feel free to put it in the chat, right? So we have a few questions. One question is, since we talked about how emotions can play a role in our decision making and our thought process so much. So how should we handle it? Like, how should we use our emotions to make the right decisions? Because in general, in our jobs and other places, we are told that we should keep our emotions aside and make logical, rational decisions, right? But as you said, in some incidents in history and in war and all, there is a use for emotion also. So how should it be?
Yeah, in regards to job, emotions is in the background and profession is in the forefront. In the family, emotions are in the forefront. That doesn't cancel wisdom in the background. Just now I was sharing with somebody that when you're working in a company, don't make that your home. It's your workplace. At the same time, you can't avoid emotions. Minimal emotions, maximum profession. ताकि अपना काम करो, पैसा ले लो, निकल जाओ. If you become attached to your place as your home, then what will happen with the home? So therefore, it is important that we also develop certain analysis, critical thinking. Some people are more emotionally driven. Some people are more logically driven. Those who are logically driven, they have less emotion. They have to develop. This can be developed. This is like when you go to school. No, many people come with zero understanding or interest in mathematics. What to speak of taste? I was telling some school children, we do not study whether not because we like it or not. We study because we need to study. Nowadays, unfortunately, people are focusing on liking and not liking. Therefore, they make very quick decisions, which are destructive. So liking and disliking Yes, it is there. But in regards to certain responsibility, you have to do it. You don't have a choice. You don't like mathematics, still you have to study. Every student one who goes to school, they don't have a hair standing on their body to study mathematics, but they have to study. Some people enjoy, some people don't enjoy. Both have to study. So similarly, this is an art. It's a skill. It's part of life. One has to develop it. You know, if you have less emotions, develop more emotions. If you have less intelligence, develop more intelligence. Like Prabhupada said, memory, sometimes for some people it comes faster, for some people it comes little longer, but it will certainly come. That's therefore it is called as sadhana. No. Sadhana is not only related to chanting, sadhana is related to many aspects of our life.
Thank you, bro. Um, Another question is that about Ramayana and Mahabharata, these epics. Should we have a different kind of mood and expectation while reading them, as opposed to when we read like more spiritual, apparently spiritual books like Bhagavatam and Chaitanya
No
Charitamrita?
spiritual book without practical reality will function. Even in the Bhagavatam, if you study carefully, the purpose of Bhagavatam is different. Parikshit is about to pass away from this world. You have to learn about 60-year rule also, no? If you say no, I will only focus on Bhagavatam, there's no harm in focusing Bhagavatam. But then you cannot use the Bhagavatam principle in your workplace. Parikshit Maharaj must have heard everything what Yudhisthira heard from Bhishma Dev, because Yudhisthira was taking over the kingdom, so he needs to know what is management. And Yudhisthira and Parikshit was quitting the kingdom. So now he was managing the principle of death. If somebody says, okay, you can die anytime. What if you live for 50 years, causing so much trouble to those who are around you? You know, you know, uh, because of irresponsibility, not doing work, not contributing to the family, not contributing in relationships, saying that I can die anytime. We should tell them, go in Vrindavan, live on begging. That's what you should do if you're not contributing. So therefore, one has to reconcile between the Bhagavatam for inner growth and the other scriptures for devotional. There is a flavor of devotion, it's full of devotion. Even during the when Ram met Bharat during the Ram Bharat Milap. Now Valmiki Ramayana, Valmiki Maharshi has written. First they discussed about politics, how to rule, how to give salary, how to make workers work, and how to pay them salary. These are all things. While knowing that their father has passed away, because they have two roles to play, one as the king, second as the son. You can't reject each of the role. बेटे का भी रोल खेलना पड़ेगा, लेकिन राजा का भी रोल करना पड़ेगा. So as much as you are a higher position, that much you have to control your emotions at the right place. That is what the Shastras teach us. That is the reason why Shastras are there.
Thank you, Prabhu. This statement that we said that more than karma, ignorance is the cause of suffering. Can you please elaborate? Someone's asked. Like, how is
Yeah.
ignorance the cause? Yeah.
Read in the Bhagavad Gita, 5th chapter, 4th chapter, you know, and 15th chapter, Sangha Shastrena Dridena Chitta. And then Krishna talks about how the living entity is covered by ignorance. No? So Agyan is cause of the greatest suffering. If you have knowledge, you can deal with your karma. If you don't have knowledge, karma becomes a perpetual. It is like investing in the stock market. In, a, in investing in the stock market of karma, it keeps on increasing. Uska bhav badhta jata hai, right? Because you don't know how it is operating. But if you know how to deal with it, then the knowledge aspect has the power to undo, because karma is not eternal. That is the only thing which is not eternal in the Gita. Jiva is eternal, Ishwar is eternal, time is eternal, Prakriti is eternal. What is not eternal? Karma is eternal. So if something is not eternal, how can that impact something which is eternal? All your pain is circumstantial. In the Bhagavatam 8th canto, Gajendra said, "No, अज्ञानी है वो काल के प्रभाव से नष्ट नहीं हो सकता." वो कैसे नष्ट होता है? ज्ञान से नष्ट होता है, भक्ति से नष्ट हो जाता है.
Thank you, bro. So we talked about the 5 principles of relationships, which will help our relationships grow strong. So how do we develop or cultivate them in our life?
First comes from from intellect. बुद्धि से ही इसको. Why we go to school? Why children is to go to Gurukul? No, yes, they have received enough affection from the parents. Parents have given some knowledge, but it is but natural that the children don't take parents seriously in regards to knowledge. Therefore, they go to a distant place to learn from the teachers. And the teachers would speak to them in such a way. They were not liberal, they were not left learning, they were not communist. They would teach children to go back and learn the dynamics of relationship. There is a school in Mumbai. Somebody was telling me they don't take children, those who have grandparents, because they feel the grandparents are bad influence. Just imagine. Say, don't know, they'll come up with their own old values, and we are a liberal school. We don't want the bad influence. Putana school hai wo, right? So therefore this kind of education system, they break the dynamics of relationship by talking wrong things to them. So they're creating their own wrong narratives. So the right narratives are given. When the child goes from the school, he comes to home. He expands the father's business, father's legacy, family legacy. In this way, they stay together having their own space. So therefore, first thing is learning through knowledge. Then slowly understand. So there is a gap between what I understand and what I practice. Arjuna heard the Gita, but it took 10 days for him to shoot Bhishma there. So that is not he being insincere, because the power of emotion is so strong that to implement what Krishna told him, even for Arjuna took 10 days. It is almost like for our ordinary people, it is taking few years. No, but Krishna did not condemn him. He gave him that time for Arjuna to reconcile between what he knows and what he implements. So similarly, what we know, what we implement, what we know, it naturally takes time. It's okay. Slowly.
Thank you, bro. In a relationship, sometimes it may happen that we are trying to reconcile and we are trying to keep up the relationship, but if the other person is, rather than reconciling, exploiting us, right, then how should we deal with the situation?
So then we have to stay away from them, because there is a limitation how much we can reconcile. We should not allow anybody to exploit us. Dedication is different from slavery. Arjuna and Krishna's relationship was full of dedication. Dedication is not one-sided. That's a wrong understanding people have. समर्पण एक जगह से नहीं चलता. That is not unconditional love. That is unconditional slavery eventually, or unconditional pampering. Duryodhan told Dronacharya, everybody is willing to die for me. So Dronacharya should have asked that question, and you rascal, how much you are willing to die for others? So that is a perversion. That's a narcissist personality. Krishna, on the other hand, he told Daruka, this Arjun, he'll cut off his body, he'll offer his flesh. So मेरे के लिए मरेगा वो. Why Krishna is telling this? He said, I will also die for him. So that is called as samarpan. Samarpan mein, there is so much reciprocation which is not born out of duty. It is born out of natural love. That is called as rag bhakti. And on the duty principle, it is very simple. ड्यूटी प्रिंसिपल इज बेसिकली ट्रांसपेरेंट बार्गेन, नेगोशिएशन है, अनरिटन नेगोशिएशन. अगर केवल माँ या बाप अपने परिवार के लिए करते रहेंगे और बाकी लोग उसका कोई कदर नहीं करेंगे, then the man is consciously, unconsciously allowing others to exploit, and that is not benefiting them. It's a destructive for their growth, because the world does not pamper them. How long can you pamper? What is your strength? What is your capacity? What is your lifespan to pamper? Therefore, tough love. Tough love is what? There is a refined negotiation. I would say unconditional law means somebody may do 70%. You do at least 30%. But you are saying, no, you do 100%, I will not do anything. They should be given a death penalty. And they will get the death penalty. Time factor will kill them. They are burdening themselves with so much of run. ऐसे कैसे हो सकता है? So therefore there is samarpan, there is sahakar, then there is sparda, and there is shoshan. A life should not be based upon, like yesterday only we were discussing. Somebody said that life is unfair. A devotee one who lives in a very, very pure spiritual atmosphere, he said, life is unfair, learn to live with it. Another devotee, who is also devotee only, he lives in real world, he said, life is unfair, learn to negotiate with it in such a way that you don't exploit others and you don't allow others to exploit you.
Thank you, bro. One question about managing emotions, that even though we know and that this is how we should use emotion and how we should bring it in and all, but sometimes in a particular situation we get emotional and we behave irrationally. So like, how can we manage our emotions, like
Just
be
still we have
prepared?
chance, failing in managing. One of the trouble is nowadays in the real world, people, even the schools have made it rule that किसी को fail नहीं करने का. They are a failure only. If you don't learn to fail, recently one American court passed a law, that son was going through certain situation, and the father was very wise person. His father and his, somebody else wrote that beautiful. It's a painful, interaction. How the judge passed a law, you know, giving no facility for the father and mother to decide about the child's, decision, certain decision. You can't, because you will say something and you'll get hurt. So there was no dialogue only. It was simply pure abuse, right, by the court. So therefore, if the system makes you feel that we should not hurt, कुछ नहीं करना चाहिए, कुछ बुरा हो गया तो. Therefore, Gita's first lesson is Matra Sparshastu Kauntaya. Life is a land of duality. You eat sugar also and you eat bitter neem also. Bitter neem कम खाते होंगे, लेकिन खाना पड़ेगा. The goal is to eat, healthy food. That doesn't mean that you eat all the bitter food, but balance करने के लिए. So therefore, people have to experience, in relationship, if all the time the children are winning the bargain, they're lost case. And only parents are winning all the time, that's also lost case. One talks about unevolved traditional rule that बाप जो बोलेगा, माँ जो बोलेगी वही सुनना पड़ेगा. So there's a conflict between the emotional tradition people or the liberal, left liberal. आजकल के बच्चे left liberal है. Even some devotee children, they come to the temple, the combination of being theistic and theistic, ritualistically theistic, but psychologically atheistic. Khatarnak, dangerous combination. Very dangerous. So the disruptive to the growth. So therefore the point is, whatever emotions you have, they should be passed through the lanes of intellect eventually. That is yoga. The moon is, our mind is connected. Chandrama manaso jata. The Bhagavatam also explains. Moon is mind. And what is the nature of mind? Mind runs so fast amongst all the planet in zodiac sign. In astrology, the moon is the fast moving planet and Saturn is the slowest moving planet. When they come together, there are situations where they come together. Moon is imagination, moon is experience, and Saturn is justice. तो जस्टिस धीरे से आता है, इमोशन जल्दी आ जाता है. तो इसको रिकंसाइल करना है. That is the art of life. We'll take last two questions because I
Yes,
have
true.
another class also.
Thank you so much. One question around the principle of tolerance, right? That when we see extreme behavior like abuse or something in a family, how do we know where to draw the line and stop tolerating?
Yeah, it's everybody has their capacity. I remember one devotee, doctor during COVID. She had to care for her father also, ailing father. Very sincerely serving. But somewhere she had to express that I'm exhausted. And expressing that I'm exhausted doesn't minimize her sincerity. Sometimes people feel that if you're sincere, you should not say that you're tired. How illogical it is. Your sincerity does not decide your capacity. Your capacity decides the level of your sincerity. How long can you go? उसकी सीमा होती है. So therefore one should not question people's sincerity based on their capacity. Right? So when you see that some people are not able to take, no, some people have greater capacity. So if people are not able to handle after a long time, after trying sincerely, after working very hard to reconcile the relationship, if it doesn't work, you can't say, oh, it's okay. If you die also, okay, but don't break. Or it's easier to say, people don't take responsibility along with instruction what they give. जो भी कुछ बोलते हैं उसके साथ में उत्तरदायित्व तो लेते हो क्या उनके जीवन का? You can give very high instructions, but you take the responsibility of the consequences. तो इसलिए the facilitator, they have to be understanding what is their capacity to handle. One can lift 40 kilo. You can't give 80 kilo to them. Now somebody said that Tata Motors, when they would make their tempos, their trucks 407, 705, they know Indian mentality. When the Japanese truck company came, they would make the trucks and write the same amount. Okay, it will carry 2 ton, 3 ton, 4 ton. But the Tatas say it will carry 3 ton, but they make 6 ton का capacity because Indian लोग ज़्यादा ही डालते हैं उसपे. Right. So similarly, one should know what is my capacity, and based on that, we should work. Any other question? Last.
Thank you, bro. Okay, there's one question about regarding fulfillment of expectations in a relationship. So I have not fully understood the question. I'll just read it
What
out.
is that? What is that?
Like seeing our expectations getting fulfilled, right? In a relationship, right? So I'll just read out the question. If you see in a community that you cannot see future expectations being fulfilled, then what do we do, such as our services or devotee association, things like that?
Yeah, that is still possible. That however much conflicts are there in regards to, in a community, you have got many. It's like a banyan tree. It's not like a bamboo tree. If you can't work with this person, you can work with other person. There are many people whom you can work under. अगर ऐसा है कि आप किसी के साथ भी काम नहीं कर सकते हो, that's not it's very unfortunate. ऐसा हो ही नहीं सकता कि मैं किसी के साथ भी काम नहीं कर सकता. I can't work with anybody. How is it possible? You will have to cooperation is the principle which helps you to grow. So they need more friendly counseling. They need more support system to see what they're talking. If there is a logic in their complaint, if their complaint is logical, then some adjustment has to be made. Hmm, then it's possible. Otherwise, nobody can say that I can't work with anybody. How can that statement be made? It's it's uh it's it's unreal. एक तो कोई होगा अपने जगत में. Shukdev Goswami also came ultimately to speak the Bhagavatam to Parikshit Maharaj. He needs somebody to speak. He had such a great knowledge, but not everybody was qualified. तो एक मिल गया कोई विद्यार्थी उनको. ऐसे कोई ना कोई मिल जाएगा. you know if you have such a trouble in relationship with community, then slowly you'll have somebody to understand and reconcile and work with. इतना हम लोग victim नहीं हो सकते. Even a bhikari in the Dadar station finds some warmth with other beggars also. भगवान ने ऐसा किसी के लिए बनाया नहीं कि कोई कह नहीं सकता अरे मेरे लिए कोई है ही नहीं. We'll find somebody. Thank you. We'll stop here.
Thank you so much, Prabhu.
Hare
Amazing, powerful wisdom of yours for sharing with us and giving your time. Right, like our channel is called Practical Spirituality. Your class is like the perfect example. Every answer was feeling like it should be a class by itself.
Hare
So,
Krishna.
thank you so much. Just to briefly summarize, that we started saying that in relationships there will always be conflicts because all relationships are based on emotions, right? And some amazing examples that if Sita and Lakshman and even Krishna and Balram themselves can have conflicts, then what to speak of us, right? But all if we want to strengthen our relationships in spite of these conflicts, as you said so beautifully, that if we base our relationships on right principles, then using those principles we can have the correct strategy to manage whatever conflicts happen, and that's how our relationships can be strong. So thank you so much, Prabhu. And as I said, we hope to see you again and again.
Hare Krishna.
And for everyone, please share these classes with all of your friends and all of your relatives also, so that they can also take advantage of the wisdom of speakers like Govind Prabhu. Like our Zoom channel might get full, but there is the YouTube live stream also happening, so we can direct people there. Thank you so much, Prabhu, and thank you everyone for attending, and we hope
Hare
to see
Krishna.
you again and again.
Hare
Hari Bol.
Krishna.